The California sun was merciless that Tuesday morning, beating down on the manicured lawns of Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. I stood in my black dress, feeling the sweat gather at the small of my back as I watched them lower my father's casket into the ground. The scent of eucalyptus from the nearby trees mixed with the overwhelming fragrance of the white lilies that covered his grave. I hadn't cried yet, not when I got the call 3 days ago, not when I saw his body at the funeral home, not even now, watching the only parent I had left disappear forever into the California earth. "You okay, honey?" David's voice was soft, concerned. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining with the practiced ease of 15 years of marriage. I squeezed back, grateful for his presence. "I'm fine," I whispered, though we both knew I wasn't. Dad and I had been estranged for the past 2 years after a bitter argument about David's business decisions. Words had been said that couldn't be taken back. Now they never would be. The pastor finished his final prayer, and people began to disperse. David's grip on my hand tightened, and he leaned close to my ear. His breath was warm against my skin, but his words were ice cold. "Now you're on your own, Emma." I turned to look at him, confused. "What?" But he was already walking away, his black suit jacket flapping in the dry Santa Ana wind that had started to pick up. I watched him go, his words echoing in my mind. What did he mean by that? We were married. We were supposed to support each other through times like this. "Emma!" A gentle voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see Patricia Williams, my father's longtime attorney, approaching with a manila envelope in her hands. She was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Mrs. Williams," I managed, my voice hoarse from the dry air. "I'm so sorry for your loss, dear. Your father was a good man." She paused, glancing around at the thinning crowd. "I know this isn't the ideal time, but there are some matters we need to discuss regarding your father's estate. Could you come to my office tomorrow morning? Say 10 o'clock. I nodded numbly. "Of course." She handed me the envelope. "These are just some preliminary documents. Nothing urgent, but you might want to look them over tonight." I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. Inside were papers that would determine my immediate future, though I had no idea how dramatically they would change everything. David was waiting by our car, a black BMW parked under the shade of a palm tree. He was on his phone, speaking in hushed tones. When he saw me approaching, he quickly ended the call. "Ready to go?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. The drive back to our house in Pasadena was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. I stared out the window at the familiar landscape of strip malls and Spanish-style houses, my mind replaying David's strange words at the cemetery. The San Gabriel Mountains loomed in the distance, hazy through the smog. Our house was a modest 2-story in a quiet neighborhood near the Rose Bowl. David had bought it 5 years ago when his consulting business was doing well. Now, with the economy struggling and clients scarce, we'd been feeling the financial pressure. I'd been working double shifts at the hospital where I was a nurse, trying to keep us afloat. "I'm going to take a shower," David announced as soon as we walked through the front door. He disappeared upstairs without another word. I stood in our living room, still holding the envelope from Patricia Williams. The afternoon light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Everything felt different now, like the house itself knew that my father was gone. I settled into the leather armchair that had been my father's favorite when he used to visit, back when we were still speaking. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope and pulled out the papers inside. The first document was a copy of my father's will, dated just 6 months ago. As I read through the legal language, my hands began to shake. Then I read it again, certain I had misunderstood. But there it was in black and white. "I leave my entire estate, including all properties, investments, and business interests, to my beloved daughter, Emma Catherine Reynolds." I dropped the papers, my heart pounding. My father had been wealthy, I knew that much. His real estate development company had been successful for decades. But I'd assumed that after our falling out, he would have changed his will. Maybe left everything to charity or to some distant relative. Instead, he'd left it all to me. The sound of a shower running upstairs seemed to fade as I picked up the papers and read through them more carefully. There were properties in Malibu, Beverly Hills, and downtown Los Angeles. Investment portfolios, business shares. The total value was staggering, over $50 million. I was rich, wealthy beyond anything I'd ever imagined. But as I sat there in the fading afternoon light, all I could think about was David's whispered words at the funeral. Now you're on your own. What had he meant? And why did I suddenly feel like I was about to find out? The next morning, I woke up to find David already gone. His side of the bed was cold, and when I checked the garage, his car wasn't there. He'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Had to run out early. See you tonight. I made coffee in our small kitchen, watching the morning news on the tablet propped against the fruit bowl. The weather forecast promised another scorching day, with temperatures reaching the mid-90s. Perfect California weather that I normally loved, but today it felt oppressive. Patricia Williams' law office was in downtown Pasadena, housed in a historic building with Spanish colonial architecture. The morning air was already thick with heat and smog as I walked from the parking garage to her office. Palm trees lined the street, their fronds rustling in the slight breeze. "Emma, thank you for coming," Patricia said, rising from behind her mahogany desk as I entered her office. The room was cool and professional, with law books lining the walls and certificates hanging in neat rows. "Please, have a seat." I settled into the leather chair across from her desk, clutching my purse tightly. "I read through the papers you gave me yesterday. I have to admit I'm shocked." Patricia smiled sadly. "Your father loved you very much, Emma. Despite your recent difficulties, you were always his priority. But we hadn't spoken in 2 years. After that fight about David's business." "Your father came to see me about 6 months ago," Patricia interrupted gently. "He wanted to update his will. He was very specific about his wishes." She pulled out a thick folder and opened it. "There are some things you need to know about your inheritance. First, the good news. You're now the sole owner of Reynolds Development Corporation, along with all its properties and investments. The company is debt-free and highly profitable." I felt dizzy. "I don't understand. Dad always said the business was struggling." "On the contrary, it's been thriving. Your father was very conservative with money, very private about his success." Patricia paused, studying my face. "Emma, there's something else. Your father hired a private investigator about 8 months ago." "A private investigator? Why?" Patricia hesitated, then slid a manila envelope across the desk. "He was concerned about your husband's business activities. The investigator's report is in there." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, bank records, and typed reports. The photos showed David meeting with various people in restaurants and office buildings. The bank records showed large cash deposits into accounts I'd never seen before. "I don't understand," I whispered, flipping through the pages. "What is this?" "Your husband has been embezzling money from his clients, Emma. He's been running a Ponzi scheme for the past 3 years, using new investors' money to pay returns to earlier investors. The scheme is about to collapse." I stared at the documents, my vision blurring. "That's impossible. David wouldn't." "There's more," Patricia said quietly. "The investigator also documented your husband's affair with a woman named Rebecca Martinez. They've been seeing each other for over a year." The world seemed to tilt. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to steady myself. No, that can't be right." Patricia reached across the desk and placed a gentle hand on mine. "I'm so sorry, Emma. Your father wanted to tell you himself, but he was waiting for the right time. He was trying to protect you. I thought about David's behavior over the past few months. The late nights he claimed were for work. The phone calls he took in private. The way he'd been distant, distracted. And yesterday at the funeral, those cold words, 'Now you're on your own.' He knew," I said slowly. "He knew about the will." Patricia nodded. "Your father suspected that David might have been trying to influence you to reconcile with him, hoping to gain access to the inheritance. That's why he kept his wealth private, why he never told you about the will." I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the busy street below. People were going about their normal lives, unaware that mine was crumbling. "What am I supposed to do now?" "That depends on what you want to do," Patricia said. "The inheritance is yours, no matter what. But you need to decide how to handle the situation with your husband. The FBI is already investigating his business activities. It's only a matter of time before he's arrested." I turned back to face her. "How long do I have?" "Days, maybe weeks. Your father left instructions that if anything happened to him, I should inform you immediately about David's activities. He didn't want you to be blindsided by the arrest. I sank back into the chair, my mind reeling. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never known the man I was sleeping next to. The man who'd whispered those cruel words at my father's funeral, thinking he was abandoning me to face my grief alone. There's one more thing, Patricia said, pulling out another document. Your father left you a letter. He asked me to give it to you after we'd discussed everything else. She handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in my father's familiar handwriting. I opened it with trembling fingers. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Patricia has told you the truth about David. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you myself. I'm sorry about many things, especially the way we parted. I never stopped loving you, sweetheart. Not for a single day. I hired the investigator because I could see that something was wrong, that you were unhappy. I wanted to protect you, but I also wanted to give you the tools to protect yourself. The money, the properties, the business, they're all yours now. Use them wisely. Use them to build the life you deserve, not the life someone else has chosen for you. I know you're strong enough to handle this. You always were the strongest person I knew, even when you were little. Remember that strength now. I love you, Emma. I always have. I always will. Dad. I folded the letter carefully, tears finally coming. They streamed down my face as I sat in Patricia's office, mourning not just my father's death, but the death of my marriage, the death of the life I thought I'd been living. Take your time, Patricia said softly. We can discuss the practical matters later. But I was already thinking ahead. David didn't know about the inheritance yet. He thought he was leaving me with nothing, that I'd be devastated and alone. He had no idea that his betrayal had actually set me free. I wiped my eyes and straightened my shoulders. My father was right. I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. And I was about to prove it. I spent the rest of the day driving around Los Angeles, trying to process everything I'd learned. I took the Pacific Coast Highway north, letting the ocean breeze clear my head as I watched the waves crash against the Malibu coastline. According to the papers Patricia had given me, I now owned a beachfront property somewhere along this stretch of paradise. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I'd been working double shifts at the hospital, worried about mortgage payments and credit card bills, I'd been an heiress all along. My father had been protecting me in the only way he knew how, by keeping me unaware of the wealth that would have made me a target. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, I finally drove home. David's BMW was in the driveway, which meant he was back from wherever he'd gone that morning. The house was lit up from inside, and I could hear music playing, jazz his favorite. I sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering my courage. Through the living room window, I could see David moving around, probably making dinner. He looked so normal, so familiar. It was hard to believe that this man I'd shared a bed with for 15 years had been living a double life. I walked through the front door, keys jingling in my hand. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. David was making his famous pasta sauce, something he only did when he was in a particularly good mood. "Hey, honey," he called from the kitchen. "You're just in time. I'm making that linguine you love." I stood in the doorway, watching him stir the sauce. He was humming along to the jazz music, completely at ease. "You seem happy tonight." He turned to smile at me, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen in love with in college. Handsome, charming, with those green eyes that had first captured my attention in our economics class. "I got some good news today. A potential new client. Could be big for the business." Another lie. According to the investigator's report, David's business was about to collapse. He was probably planning his escape route, maybe thinking about running away with Rebecca Martinez. "That's wonderful," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "David, can we talk?" "About yesterday at the funeral." His smile faltered slightly. "What about it?" "You said something to me. Right after the service. You said, 'Now you're on your own.'" He turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce more vigorously. "I don't remember saying that. I was probably just trying to comfort you. Maybe said something about how you're not alone." "No, that's not what you said." The stirring stopped. David set down the wooden spoon and turned to face me, his expression carefully neutral. "Emma, you were upset. Grief can make people misremember things." I pulled out my phone and showed him the recording app I'd been running. I recorded the entire service. Would you like me to play it back? I hadn't actually recorded anything, but the bluff worked. David's face went pale, and he sank into one of the kitchen chairs. Okay, fine. I said it. But you don't understand the pressure I've been under. What pressure? The business, Emma. It's been struggling for months. I've been trying to keep us afloat, but... Stop lying to me. My voice was sharper than I'd intended. I know about the Ponzi scheme, David. I know about the embezzling. I know about Rebecca. The color drained completely from his face. He looked like he might be sick. How? My father knew. He had you investigated. I pulled out the folder Patricia had given me and dropped it on the kitchen table. It's all here. The fake accounts, the stolen money, the affair. Everything. David stared at the folder like it was a venomous snake. Emma, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you've been stealing from your clients? Can you explain why you've been cheating on me for over a year? Can you explain why you whispered those cruel words at my father's funeral? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing but now made me sick. It started small, just borrowing a little from one client to pay another. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. And Rebecca? She was just... He stopped, seeing the look on my face. Emma, please. I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but we can work through this. Mistakes? I laughed bitterly. You've been running a criminal enterprise, David. The FBI is investigating you. You're going to prison. His face crumpled. How do you know about the FBI? Because my father's lawyer told me. Because my father was trying to protect me from you. I took a deep breath. There's something else you should know. Dad left me everything in his will. Everything, David. The business, the properties, the investments. All of it. David's mouth fell open. That's impossible. You haven't spoken to him in 2 years. $50 million, I continued. That's what I inherited. $50 million that you'll never see a penny of. The change in his expression was immediate and terrifying. The mask of the loving husband slipped completely, replaced by something cold and calculating. You can't be serious. Dead serious. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. Do you have any idea what you've done? I was counting on that money to pay back my investors. Without it, I'm ruined. You were already ruined, David. You just didn't know it yet. You have to help me, he said, his voice desperate. We're married. We're supposed to be a team. We were a team. Until you decided to lie to me, steal from innocent people, and cheat on me with your girlfriend. Rebecca means nothing to me. Then why have you been planning to run away with her? The investigator has photos of you two looking at plane tickets to Costa Rica. David's face went through a series of emotions. Shock, anger, fear, and finally rage. You self-righteous bitch, he snarled. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Working your little nursing job, playing the martyred wife. Well, guess what? I've been supporting us for years while you made peanuts at that hospital. With stolen money. I did what I had to do. And now you're going to abandon me when I need you most. He stepped closer, his voice rising. That money should be mine too. I'm your husband. Not for much longer. The words hung in the air between us. David stared at me, his face flushed with anger and desperation. You can't divorce me. Not now. Not when everything's falling apart. Watch me. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrists. Emma, please. You don't understand what's at stake here. These people I owe money to, they're not the kind of people who just write off debts. They'll kill me. I pulled free of his grip, backing toward the living room. Then you should have thought of that before you started stealing from them. $50 million, he screamed, his voice echoing through the house. $50 million, and you won't even help your own husband. I had never seen him like this before. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck, spittle flying from his mouth. This was the real David, the man who'd been hiding behind a facade of charm and respectability. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Now. This is my house too. Actually, it's not. I pulled out another document from Patricia's folder. The house is in my name. Has been since my father bought it for us 5 years ago. I just found out today. David snatched the deed from my hands, reading it frantically. This can't be right. I signed the mortgage papers. You signed rental agreements. My father bought the house and let you think you were paying a mortgage. He never trusted you, David. Turns out he was right. David crumpled the deed in his fist and threw it across the room. You're destroying me, Emma. You're destroying everything we built together. No, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. You did that all by yourself. I'm just refusing to go down with you. He stood there for a long moment, breathing heavily. Then, without another word, he turned and walked upstairs. I heard him moving around in our bedroom, opening and closing drawers. 20 minutes later, he came back down with a suitcase. This isn't over, he said, his voice cold. I'll fight you for half of everything. Community property laws, Emma. I'm entitled to half of that inheritance. Actually, you're not. Inheritances received during marriage remain separate property in California. My father's lawyer made sure of that. David's face went white again. You planned this. You and your father. You planned this whole thing. My father died of a heart attack, David. The only thing anyone planned was your downfall. And you did that all by yourself. He wheeled his suitcase to the door, then turned back one last time. I loved you, Emma. I really did. No, I said sadly. You loved what you thought I could give you. There's a difference. After he left, I sat in the quiet house, listening to the jazz music that was still playing. The pasta sauce was burning on the stove, filling the kitchen with the smell of charred tomatoes and garlic. I turned off the burner and opened the windows, letting the cool evening air flow through the house. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. 3 months later, I stood on the deck of my new home in Malibu, watching the sunrise paint the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and rose. The house was one of the properties I'd inherited from my father, a stunning modern structure built into the cliffs above the beach, with floor-to-ceiling windows and an infinity pool that seemed to blend into the horizon. The morning was crisp and clear, with a gentle breeze, carrying the scent of salt and eucalyptus. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug and reflected on how much had changed since that awful day at the cemetery. David had been arrested 2 weeks after our confrontation. The FBI had been closing in on him for months, and without the inheritance money to pay back his investors, the whole scheme had collapsed quickly. The news had been full of stories about the Pasadena Ponzi scheme, with photos of David being led away in handcuffs. He was currently awaiting trial and facing 20 years in federal prison. Rebecca Martinez had disappeared the day after his arrest, taking with her the $200,000 in cash that David had been planning to use for their escape to Costa Rica. The FBI was still looking for her, but I had a feeling she was long gone. I had testified before a grand jury about what I'd known and when I'd known it. The prosecutors had been sympathetic, especially after they realized I'd been as much a victim as anyone else. My father's investigation had actually helped their case, providing crucial evidence about the timeline of David's crimes. The divorce had been finalized last week. David had tried to fight it from jail, filing motions claiming he was entitled to half of my inheritance. But Patricia Williams had been thorough in her preparation, and the judge had ruled in my favor on every point. I was free, legally and financially. I had quit my job at the hospital, though I missed the work and the patients. Instead, I'd thrown myself into learning about my father's business. Reynolds Development Corporation was indeed thriving, with projects throughout Southern California. I discovered that my father had been quietly building affordable housing developments, using the profits from high-end properties to fund homes for working families. He was trying to make a difference. His longtime business partner, Maria Santos, had told me during our first meeting. Your father never forgot where he came from. He grew up poor, and he wanted to make sure other people had opportunities he never had. I kept Maria on as CEO while I learned the ropes. She was a brilliant woman in her 50s who'd been working with my father for over a decade. Together, we'd expanded the affordable housing program and started a scholarship fund for nursing students, a tribute to my own career and my father's belief in education. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID, Patricia Williams. Good morning, Patricia, I said, answering on the second ring. Good morning, Emma. I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all. I was just enjoying the sunrise. I have some news about David's case. He's agreed to a plea bargain. 15 years in federal prison in exchange for cooperating with the FBI's investigation into other financial crimes. I felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and something that might have been pity. How are the investors doing? The people he stole from? Better than expected. Between the assets we've recovered and the restitution fund you established, most of them will get about 60% of their money back. It's not everything, but it's more than they would have gotten otherwise. I had used $5 million of my inheritance to create a victim restitution fund. It seemed like the right thing to do. These people had been hurt by my husband's crimes, and I had the means to help them. There's something else, Patricia continued. I got a call from someone at the Los Angeles Times. They want to do a feature story about you, about how you've used your inheritance to help the community. I sighed. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of attention. Think about it. Your story could inspire other people who are going through difficult times. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is show others that it's possible to rebuild after everything falls apart. After I hung up, I walked down to the beach. The sand was cool beneath my bare feet, and the waves lapped gently at the shore. I'd been coming here every morning for the past month, finding peace in the rhythm of the ocean. I thought about my father, and how I wished I could tell him about everything that had happened. I wished I could apologize for the 2 years we'd lost to pride and stubbornness. I wished I could thank him for protecting me, even when I didn't know I needed protection. But most of all, I wished I could tell him that I understood now. I understood why he'd been so concerned about David. I understood why he'd been so private about his wealth. I understood why he'd left me everything, not just the money and properties, but the opportunity to start over. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Janet, my former supervisor at the hospital. Saw the news about the scholarship fund. So proud of you. Coffee soon. I smiled, typing back. Absolutely. How about tomorrow? Over the past few months, I'd reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I'd also started seeing a therapist, working through the trauma of discovering that my entire marriage had been built on lies. It was hard work, but I was beginning to feel like myself again, or maybe like the person I was meant to be all along. I was also dating again, though cautiously. I'd met someone at a charity fundraiser last month, a widowed doctor named Michael who volunteered at free clinics on weekends. He was kind and genuine, and when he looked at me, I could tell he saw Emma the person, not Emma the heiress. Take your time, he'd said after our third date. I'm not going anywhere. It was so different from David, who'd always been pushing for more, faster, bigger. Michael was content to let things develop naturally, which was exactly what I needed. My phone rang again. This time it was Maria Santos. Emma, good morning. I hope you don't mind me calling on Saturday. Not at all. What's up? I just got off the phone with the mayor's office. They want to discuss our proposal for the downtown housing project. They're interested in partnering with us. I grinned. The downtown project was something I'd been passionate about, a mixed-use development that would include affordable housing, retail space, and a community center. It was exactly the kind of project my father would have loved. That's fantastic news, Maria. When do they want to meet? Monday morning. Can you make it? I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat on the beach for a while longer, watching the waves and thinking about the future. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of: financial security, a beautiful home, meaningful work, and the freedom to live life on my own terms. But more than that, I had something I'd never had before: the knowledge that I was strong enough to handle whatever came next. The sun was fully up now, and the beach was starting to fill with joggers and early morning surfers. I stood up, brushing the sand off my legs, and walked back up to the house. I had a life to live, and for the first time in years, I was excited about the possibilities ahead. That evening, I sat in my father's study, now my study, looking through photo albums I'd found in his desk. There were pictures of me as a child, at my high school graduation, at my wedding. In every photo, he was smiling proudly, his arm around my shoulders. I found a letter he'd written to me when I graduated from nursing school, praising my compassion and dedication. You have a gift for helping people heal, he'd written. Never forget that, no matter where life takes you. I thought about that now, as I planned the expansion of our affordable housing program and the scholarship fund. Maybe I wasn't working as a nurse anymore, but I was still helping people heal, helping them rebuild their lives after setbacks and disappointments. I pulled out a piece of paper and started writing. Dear Dad, I wish I could tell you in person how sorry I am for the years we lost. I wish I could thank you for everything you did to protect me, even when I didn't understand or appreciate it. I'm using the gifts you left me, not just the money, but the lessons about integrity, compassion, and the responsibility that comes with privilege. I'm trying to make a difference, the way you did. I know now that you never stopped loving me, even when we weren't speaking. I never stopped loving you either. I just forgot how to show it. I'm going to be okay, Dad. Better than okay. I'm going to live the life you always wanted for me. A life of purpose, authenticity, and joy. Thank you for everything. Love always, Emma. I folded the letter carefully and walked out to the deck. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. I held the letter up to the ocean breeze and let it go, watching it dance through the air before disappearing into the waves. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But tonight I was at peace. I had weathered the storm of betrayal and loss, and I had emerged stronger than ever. My husband had whispered, "Now you're on your own," at my father's funeral, thinking he was condemning me to a life of struggle and poverty. Instead, he had set me free. The ocean breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of laughter. Life was good. Life was full of possibilities, and I was ready for all of them.